How can you prioritize personal freedom and not be a Bitcoiner? Because Bitcoin is the essence of total freedom. The natural state of the world is prices fall and quality goes up because people compete with one another. Like, what could you do with all those savings, all that excess time? Invest it in your family, have more children, create more wealth, create more prosperity. This is the future with Bitcoin, right? All this is coming. We've got the greatest wealth transfer in history coming down the pipe, and you're incredibly early.
Alrighty guys, welcome back. Today we have the very man behind the What's the Problem video. He's a legend himself through the Bitcoin space and someone that we would send around to people that we're trying to introduce to Bitcoin. So welcome aboard, Joe Bryan, and say a quick hello to the camera.
Hi, Joey. Thanks very much for having me on. And also, I mean, for the viewers, it's 5 a.m. for Joey, and it's 7 p.m. for me. So I really appreciate your flexibility to make this happen. So.
Yeah, I'm on struggle street today, but I'm sure we'll get through it. So looking forward to this conversation. I think a lot of people clicking this video have probably already watched your video, but for the people that haven't, can you just give us sort of a broad core message to what the video is about and sort of how it explains the debasement of currency?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the title's "What's the Problem?" and it's there's no indication it's a Bitcoin video when you see it. Even in the description, it doesn't mention Bitcoin, and that's intentional because Bitcoin is it's a fairly inaccessible topic. Even 16 years later, it's everything you don't know about money and everything you don't know about technology combined, and so people struggle to have a sufficiently developed mental model of the world in which to place Bitcoin, because it seems like this sort of ephemeral thing. But it's like anything. If you rock up with a solution for something, but people don't understand what the problem is, then they're not going to value it. And so when I made the video, it was very much focused on, if everyone just understood the problem, the value for Bitcoin would become very, very clear as the solution. And so the video just gives you a skeletal mental framework for how the world works, and how the world works because of the money being broken. And it's just a story that lasts just over half an hour, and anybody can watch it from any background, any age, any political view, sex, religion, anything. There's no sharp edges, but you can watch it, and from starting at zero, at the end, you understand why the world is precisely the way it is, why the problems always seem to get worse, and why it feels like society is crumbling. And it's because of the money. But throughout the story, there's like two halves of an island, and on one half, you have money that gets corrupted, and the other half, money that doesn't get corrupted. And the half that doesn't get corrupted does very, very well. And we see how the world should work when you have perfect money in a free market. Whereas on the other side of the wall, it gets corrupted early and then it gets corrupted further. And through a set of logical steps, you end up just in the world that is today, even though it's a story. And suddenly you understand where the obesity crisis came from, where the forever wars come from, where all manner of different types of inflation come from, why the family unit is being destroyed, why the demographics change across the West. All of these are downstream of the fact that the money is broken, and directly driven from the fact the money is broken. And once you see it, you can't see it again. It's like humans remember stories. And so you might get some of the details wrong, but you'd be able to tell someone what the story was about, how it generally worked, what happened, and what the conclusion was. And that you don't forget that knowledge. And so once you have that framework, understanding where Bitcoin fits into your worldview becomes super clear. And it's like, okay, well, now I understand perfectly why Bitcoin is so important for the world. And yeah, it's just over half an hour. So if you haven't watched it, please do go and watch it.
Yeah, we won't go down too many spoilers. So if you haven't watched it, if you feel like there's something wrong in this world, a problem in this world, watch that video and maybe it can sort of open your eyes to what could be the problem, which is what we're saying, that we believe it's the money. We believe the money is broken and we potentially think Bitcoin is the solution as sound money. You personally, what made you first look into Bitcoin before you made those videos and began spending more and more time in this new system?
Well, it was COVID. I dismissed, well, I not fully dismissed Bitcoin before. I just didn't have, I wasn't at the right point in my personal life to spend the time focused on it, and to be able to put in the small amount of work required to make the penny drop. Because you know it was probably early 2010s and then again mid 2010s when I had various touch points with it. But it was only in 2020 during COVID that it became very, very clear something was wrong with the world. And the key thing for me was the world is closed, but the stock markets are flying. I was like, but this doesn't make any sense at all. How can the stock markets all be flying and if the world is shut? I was like, somebody's just printing incredible amount of money somewhere. And it's, you start going down the thought process of, well, if they're printing money, they're debasing me. And I've been aware of, inflation, but I never really, because I come from a financial background. Well, I'd done physics at uni and then went to into investment banking. So I didn't have a structural economics background, which is probably good given it's total nonsense. But I never really questioned some of the fundamentals because I'd specialized very early. But in 2020, it was just like it was very clear inflation was picking up, was going to pick up. Asset prices were flying, and the world was broken. It's like somebody somewhere is printing a load of money. How am I going to protect the savings that we have as a family? And so I started looking at hard assets. It was like gold, and then it was like, okay, I should learn about this Bitcoin thing. And then very quickly it was like, I actually don't need this gold at all. You why why buy the why buy a donkey when you can buy the racehorse? Um, given what it is you want to do, and it goes from initially I was thinking about Bitcoin as a very clear asymmetrical trade. That's all it was. It was like how do I get the right side of this debasement, which I know is happening. But ultimately, the idea was, well, I'll be able to sell it for more fiat in the future. Whereas, once you start going down that rabbit hole and that thought process, you realize you're actually never going to. It's just going to become the money. And
Never
then you
going
sort of
back.
in your mind, never going back. Never going back. I mean, we still live in a predominantly fiat world. So, every you have some people who are able to live and function fully on a Bitcoin standard, own no fiat, interact with no fiat. That's still very, very hard, especially if you have a family and children, and and so you end up inevitably having a foot in both worlds to a degree. But you try and lean to one side as much as you possibly can. But yeah, it's very clear to me now that there will be a time in the future Bitcoin will be the money, so you're never going to need to sell it. You just use it.
It's funny how COVID woke up so many Bitcoiners because I think it wasn't just the taste for freedom. Like something inherently felt wrong with the stimulus checks handed out. It was kind of like, even if you were paying, like I had friends at school that were getting $90 a week at a cleaning job, suddenly we're getting $450 stimulus checks every week. And I just went, this makes no sense. There's no like proof of what you were earning to then what payments. It was just like free money, free money, free money, free money. And in that moment, everyone's going, oh, COVID sucks, because we had the harshest lockdowns, I think, in the world here in Victoria, Australia. And it was like we literally could not leave the house. There was a curfew. It was just nuts. There was a stage where you couldn't even see like your girlfriend. And then eventually they're like, oh, you can see them, but it's got to be within these kilometers. And it was just shocking because everyone was just free money, free money, free money. And then not long after that, it was like, oh, why are the petrol prices this much? Why are the groceries this much? Why are houses exploding on the back of COVID? Why is the stock market ripping? Why does it feel like if you're holding assets, you've been absolutely blessed, and then it feels like if you're holding dollars in the bank account, you're getting destroyed? And so many Bitcoiners were like birthed out of COVID because it was really a taste of what it looks like to strip back freedom.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's that combination with the reduction in freedoms as well, because Bitcoin is not just about debasement. It's not just about inflation protection. It's about sovereignty, self sovereignty. And COVID is the absolute opposite of that. You had all of your freedom stripped away, and we just went along with it. I mean, looking back now, it is crazy, absolutely crazy. I mean, you could not do that again. You could not do that again. I think the number of people who have been shaken awake because of COVID is massive, far more than the number of Bitcoiners. Ultimately, they'll all become Bitcoiners. Because, as we were talking before we came on for like 15, 20 minutes, we should have been recording. But there are lots of Bitcoin adjacent communities who are already Bitcoiners. They just haven't found Bitcoin because there's such an overlap. Is that how can you prioritize personal freedom and not be a Bitcoiner? Because Bitcoin is the essence of total freedom. Like it's the only thing in the world that you can own and no one can take off you unless you decide to give it to them. I can't believe we went along with it for the period of time that we did. But I think in the long run it will be viewed as one of the sort of tipping points for helping accelerate Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, although that time was extremely devastating for, I'd say, most people, whether it was suddenly like a mental illness just from being locked away out of society, or we saw a lot of things come from that it wasn't just loss of job, but a lot of people just sort of went crazy. And there was, yeah, I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole in itself. But I sort of wanted to lead that into our next question, which is how do governments obscure or justify their repeated use and abuse of the monetary expansion, the big red button from your story, in the current fiat system, and then how can Bitcoin strip this abuse from money?
Okay. Um, so the essence of the story, if people haven't seen it, there is a big red button that exists, and whoever is in charge of the money can press the big red button and change the characteristics, and that's primarily along two axes. One is the quantity of money available, which somebody can print it for themselves, but also they can change the rules around your ability to use the money. So they remove your ability to be self-sovereign. Now, we are not self-sovereign at the moment. If you try and make any transfer in the bank, as you well know in Australia, it's nigh on impossible to move your own money. Right? You need multiple layers of permission just to do anything. So it's not like we're starting from perfect money on that axis, but it will definitely get worse as they try and shoe in central bank digital currencies and digital IDs and remove any remaining vestige of freedom. But if you think just about the main axis, which is just the quantity of money available, you don't hear on your TV about what the source of inflation is. You also don't hear on your TV that inflation is necessarily bad. The default positioning of inflation is we don't know where it comes from, but we need a little bit of inflation. Otherwise, the economy won't work. Now, both of those things are just lies, are total lies. Right? Inflation comes through money printing. It's like we get taught this in school about some far off land, 100 years ago, when they print a load of money and you get hyperinflation. It is just the same now. Right? Apart from it's not wheelbarrows full of cash in the street, they print it digitally and it goes onto a balance sheet somewhere. Right? You have to go out and work for it, but they can print it for free. Right? The government/central bank print it for free. So that's the first thing. But it's when you when you talk about the two aspects of one being the not knowing where it comes from, and the second justifying it. The second one is then if you did have access to a big red button, Joey. Say if I gave you access to a big red button, the natural consequence of you having that is you will press it, and you're inclined to help support the idea that pressing it is not a bad thing, and actually is probably a good thing. So what you do is you encourage a school of economic thought and you embrace a school of economic thought with your central bank that inflation is good. Because if everyone thinks inflation is good or necessary, you can press the big red button and print more money. And by printing more money, you centralize the government within the economy. You help the government grow. You help the government get more involved in various aspects of the economy, which undermines the whatever you have left of the free market. it increases rules and regulations, adds more sand into the everyday transactions. Regulatory frameworks pop up left, right, and center. You now can't start a business. You can't compete with other businesses. So prices start going up because there's a lack of competition and quality starts going down. Whereas in a free market with perfect money, as you'll see from the video, the natural state of the world is prices fall and quality goes up because people compete with one another. Right? If you make it impossible for people to compete with one another, or you protect certain things, of course you start getting prices going up. And of course you start getting quality deteriorating because there's whoever's producing that product or service at that price is being insulated from competition. And so the natural consequence is it just deteriorates. The government printing money has numerous effects, but the first is it distorts the free market. And so you don't get the prices declining, which should be happening. So when you're not printing money and the free market is in operation, prices are falling, quality is going up, which if you think about what that means, it means the money is becoming more valuable. The normal thought from the central bank and what most Keynesian economics, which is Keynesianism is the underpinning of the modern financial system, is their thought would be, well, if the money's becoming more valuable, people won't spend it. They'll save it. When you have a central bank that wants to, or a government that wants to grow and give free money out, as we talked about as well, to win votes and not win votes, but mainly stay in power, right, by whatever means necessary. It's much easier to want to put yourself in a position where you can give free money out, you can write checks. You can't do that by issuing debt if the money becomes more valuable over time, because your debts will grow in real terms. What you want is to be able to issue debt and have that debt get eroded over time in real terms through inflation. And so this is why. And so they print more money, the prices go up. That's justified as being like, we need this for a healthy economy. And it just perpetuates forever. And the debts get eroded and the purchasing power loss is put onto the population. This is how it works. And then central banks will all, if you asked a central banker, and this has been done, people have asked Jerome Powell, why do you target 2%? And the answer is, well, all the central banks target 2%. Okay, that's not an answer. That's not a reason why you target 2%. Just because you're all in on it isn't the justification, right? It's like, that makes no sense. It's like, why did you steal that car? Well, everyone steals cars. No, well, that doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. What's the actual rationale for you having 2% inflation? And there isn't one. It's the central bank saying we are going to steal 2% a year from you forever, and that's our target. We're actually going to steal 10% because that's what we actually experience, but we'll report it as 3% because we get to mark our own homework. There's a very long answer to your question of, how do they justify it and what are the consequences? But it's a rigged system. And I would add one last thing there. This is rigged because this is not what happens when you leave people alone. And everybody at home, when they've watched the video, will be very, very clear on why that's the case. Because prices should fall and quality should go up through competition and innovation. And that's clearly not the case, clearly not the world we live in. So something is wrong, like something is broken. And it's the money. The money is broken.
It's funny seeing deflation even with this system. The printer, the debt, the credit, everything. Deflation is still trying to bring prices down. So like TVs, for example, were extremely expensive initially when they first came out, like literally thousands of dollars, equal to say $10,000 today. And then the other day when I bought a brand new TV for like say $700, it was a huge TV, 4K, yada, yada, yada. And so deflation is trying to come in with automation, AI, computers, trying to bring prices down. But our system is just going, let's fight back and let's try and elevate prices again. And it's like, You're just destroying all sectors of everything because as you print more and more money trying to fight the deflation in one area because you don't want prices to fall, it's going to destroy everything else and lift everything. And so, oh, I just get frustrated.
Yeah. But the thing is, you're right. Like you see massive deflation in technology, and so the speed of the speed of innovation and competition outweighs the money printer in some areas. Like you could not print money fast enough to make a TV go up in price. You just can't, right? Because you may not see the price going down in the shops, but that's because the quality's doubling every couple of years. If you measured the price for the same quality, it'd be dropping dramatically, right? So the TV is, it's $1,000 and then it's 900, then it's 800, then it's 700 for a few years. But by the end, you've got a product which is like 100 times better than the one at the start, right? So there's been massive, massive deflation. But it's a combination of technological progress and competition in certain areas. Now, if you look at other areas of the economy, you don't have massive technological drivers, and then you absolutely don't have sufficient competition for those things, right? And the removal of the competition through regulation, and whether it's universities or healthcare, pharmaceuticals, the defense sector, all of these things, where they're effectively protected. It means you don't have the competition, and they can just put up prices every year, because inflation, right? And so you don't get the benefit accruing to the population. The population just get stolen from, and they'll pass on the price increase based on inflation plus a percentage. So whatever the reported inflation is, they get to whack some more on top, and they're insulated from competition. And at the same time, the quality will fall, and they'll shrink the product by repackaging it every time, making it 10% less every time. And so you have this sort of bifurcation in sectors within the economy where deflation absolutely happens in some areas to the benefit of everybody and makes people more productive. And systematic inflation on steroids happens in other areas, mainly the ones closest to the government.
It's interesting seeing quality drop just in even things like McDonald's, for example. So we've progressed as society, but they have to reduce quality as prices rise. And so, say a Big Mac or a cheeseburger or whatever was this big initially, it's gotten smaller, the quality's gotten worse. They're now cooking in vegetable oils instead of beef tallow or whatever it may be. And so, even in these monopolized institutions, almost like McDonald's has gotten that big, even they feel the quote unquote pressure. But because they're just becoming a monopoly with all this fast food nonsense crap, because they know how to produce at a lower price, their prices are still going up. And so, that's another thing. Like they can reduce quality and the prices are still just going through the roof.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't. I mean, there's definitely a branding power there. So you get some companies that have such a well-known brand that almost irrespective of what they did with their product, people would still go. Right? But I don't think the reduction in the size and the compromise in the quality that you highlighted is necessarily restricted to the big players. The sort of where you have a monopoly or duopoly, because you don't really necessarily have a monopoly in fast food. It's just they have such pricing power, such branding power. But this happens everywhere. And so you go to any business that's been running 20 years, 10 years, and if you could take a snapshot of their product every year for 20 years, you just have the comparison because people have the McDonald's adverts from 20 years ago. They don't have the burger joint on the corner or the restaurant down the road. You'd see the same thing. You'd see the same thing. And it is not because the businesses are being greedy. It's because the government's printing money. And to make that very clear, I mean, obviously, I should caveat that with like some businesses will be greedy. Some people will take you have bad actors or compromised actors in every walk of life, but they get found out eventually, right? If you try and rip your customers off by putting the prices up or compromising on quality, you should get out competed. Your customers will realize eventually, and you'll lose, right? So any business person is thinking about maximizing their long-term profitability for the business. But when the government prints money for free through issuing debt or monetizing the debt directly with the central bank and expanding the balance sheet, that money goes into the pocket of the government. They then spend it in the economy through one way or another with the people close to the government. And so what happens is that looks like demand. That looks like demand for goods and services. And what happens when you have increased demand? Prices go up when you don't increase the supply. But it's not demand, it's just extra money. Right? So the prices go up near the government, right? Make those bits of the economy more profitable, which attracts the mobile capital, mobile people from the rest of the economy to move closer to the government to come and compete for this extra profitability, which makes the rest of the economy under less productive because less people are competing, right? So prices start to go up near the government, start to stop going down in the rest of the economy. And then as the businesses receiving the money then spend it in the rest of the economy on people, inputs, etc., those start going up in price. They go up in price for everyone, even the people not close to the government. And so, your McDonald's, your burger joint on the corner, your restaurant down the road, they start seeing all their input costs going up. Now it costs more to hire someone. It costs more to buy their fresh produce. The energy costs more. And so they look at their menu that they've had for the last couple of years and think like, if I offer the same product with the same prices, my profit margin is reduced. And so you have to make a change. It's not them being greedy, it's them just reacting to the position they've been put in by the government. And so they have to make a change. It's like, okay, well, I can either put the prices up and keep the product exactly the same size, same quality, or I can keep the price the same, the quality the same, but just make it 10% smaller, or I can keep it the same size, same price, and just compromise on the quality. So now I'm using vegetable oil and not beef tallow.
Or just all
Or,
three.
or great, a combination. It's like which lever do you want to pull, right? But this is not a one-off event. This is like constant, constant. If your money's being debased at 8 to 10% a year, you're having to compromise on these things at 8 to 10% a year to restore your profit margin. And this is why it just looks like things are just deteriorating massively. So you look at the compound effect then of a McDonald's Big Mac now versus 10 years ago, it's like half the size. I'm picking random percentages, like it's half the size, twice the price, and half the quality. And you're like, okay, well, that's not good, is it? It's not McDonald's being greedy, it's just them reacting to the money printer. And it's the same for everything. It's the same for your manufactured products. It's the same for, goods and services. More expensive, smaller, lower quality. And it's incessant and it's not going to stop. And then this is why humans are there, this is why we have the obesity crisis. We're consuming stuff we should never be consuming. And as the impact of this, triumvirate of like awfulness ripples through products, people's take home pay is lagging behind the cost of living. And so people are getting squeezed. And so they're having to actively move down the quality curve for their own purchasing just because the prices have gone up as well. So the product's being compromised as you are being forced to go and buy a cheaper product anyway because you're getting squeezed. So it's like accelerating the negative impacts for you. And then this manifests itself in health and you know everything else. Everything else is why you can't buy a house. It's why people put off having children. you can't save. All of this is because of the money printer. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some, some monopolistic tendencies in some sectors as well. Fast food probably isn't really one of them, but you definitely get them where the government's involved in protecting the public, with rules and regulations unnecessarily, which exacerbates it even further.
I don't think like the fast food joints are necessarily being greedy. I just think I think they know how to play the game a little bit better than the local bakery, the local bakehouse or whatever, because like what I'm seeing on a local level is, you know, 5 more McDonald's will pop up quite successfully, and then to the side we'll see all these local businesses close. And so I just think they can't compete with someone that knows how to play the game. Like I think McDonald's, maybe they're not being greedy, but they know how to play a little bit better. They know how to hide it a little bit better. When someone that's making a toasted sandwich has to reduce the quality of bread, and that's their base layer, it gets exposed very quickly. Or they have to reduce the eggs or whatever, and everything that's very base products like bread, eggs, milk, they're going up. It's really hard to hide. Whereas I think McDonald's and other places, although they're not being greedy, they know how to play the game a little bit better. They've been in the business a bit longer, and they've also obviously got the brand recognition and everything. So it's a lot easier to survive. They're going to have a much slower death. But I think everything else, it's just a rapid death. Like I've seen businesses open and they're closed within 3 years, a 3-year lease, and they can't compete. They can't keep putting their prices up higher because people aren't going to pay $20 for a ham and cheese toasty.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of other things to say there as well. Like the fiat system has a centralizing effect over time, because when you have a big red button in a system, it pays to be closer to the big red button, and the bigger you are, the closer you become. And so if you think about the impacts of inflation, the impacts of inflation are worse for the people as far from the big red button as possible, because they get the money last, but they still have all the negative impacts of the consequences of the button being pressed, the inflation. Also, when you try and borrow money, it's very expensive. Whereas the bigger you are, the cheaper, and the closer you are to the big red button, the cheaper the financing. And when people become aware that the money is being debased, one of the most obvious things to do is just borrow loads of money and just buy assets, because the assets tend to go up if you leverage them faster than the cost of the money, especially if you can get it on preferential terms by being close to the government or close to the banking sector. And the bigger you are, the better you can borrow money, right? And this is so over time, your small mom and pop stores struggle for financing on any reasonable terms, whilst they're getting absolutely hammered by inflation. And so they close or they sell to someone bigger who can buy them on better terms. And so you get this centralization effect. And I think that's what you're also describing. You're describing there. It's so there are other aspects at play, unfortunately. So that's the first one. The second is that the government actually makes it worse. So you're describing here like a retail outlet. Like I don't know whether you've ever looked into ever starting a retail business, Joey. Okay, you have a look. Have a look. It is horrendous, right? So I don't know. I must admit I don't know the specifics of Australia, but I imagine it's somewhat similar to here in the UK. So if you want to go and start a business on the high street in the UK, before you've even opened your doors, you've had to write a massive check to the council. So they will charge you money just to create a business on the high street. You have business rates, and these are like thousands of pounds a month. And this is a tax on businesses. This is local government empowered by central government to try and rip the eyes out of entrepreneurs, business people. And it has the effect of killing businesses. And so you're getting stung as a business person, especially a small business person, from almost every angle you could care to evaluate it. Yeah, I mean it's pretty horrible. It's pretty horrible, and the direction of travel is not a good one, because it's not getting better. It just gets worse and worse and worse through time. Because what happens is, as we're all seeing, even when the government has access to a big red button, When, especially when they have access to a big red button, they just issue debt incessantly, knowing that they can never go bust. They can just print more money, right? So it just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows, and so everyone just runs a massive budget deficit because suddenly your interest costs become far bigger as a proportion of your costs as your debt becomes bigger and rates go up than your tax receipts, and you have to issue more debt to cover the fact that you have a budget deficit, which means you then have to more of a budget deficit and issue more debt. Like we're in a death spiral, and ultimately it gets monetized by the central bank, and it just destroys the purchasing power of the money. And so, when you have a government that's in a perpetual deficit, it's always we need to raise taxes or cut spending, and people don't like cutting spending because they like giving out free money. If I stop giving you free money, you stop voting for me. So I'll raise the taxes on some sector of society to try and justify balancing the budget. So you raise taxes on business people. You raise taxes on, the wealthy, so you can give out free money. And that just kills the incentives to work. And it just spirals you faster to, currency equals zero purchasing power. This is the trajectory we are on, and I think everyone knows that. We're just we're watching the slow motion Weimar Republic all across the West.
Yeah, I wanted to pivot to housing. Something that we've seen in Australia that just passed, and the politicians are like, "Yay!" is a now 5% deposit and a down payment for a house instead of 10%. And so they're encouraging young people now. They can get into the market with only $30,000 or $40,000, whatever it may be. And it's just sad to watch because it is the biggest like Ponzi scheme ever. Because in Australia, it's our number one tax producing asset. It's basically all we have. It's just Aussie property. That's sort of what Australia is built around. And so, of course, they're going to continue to try and lift this market as much as possible and create this bigger and bigger bubble. So that the median house in Australia is now close to $1 million. And so to think that I can come up with this sort of money without taking a 40 to 50-year mortgage, it's like, wait, so they want me to be a debt slave for 40 to 50 years just for one house? And this is not a beautiful, don't imagine a mansion. Like, this is the average house. Like, it's just insanity. Like, a lot of Australians would go, oh, this 5% allows so many more people to enter the market. And I just think it's going to help those that are already in the market to just get more and more and more. And although it might allow someone like me to sneak in with a 5%, I'm then going to have the longest mortgage ever at a terrible rate. And it's just like, it's going to suck that many young people into a debt trap.
Yeah. Yeah, why would you do that? Why would you do that? The the fact that you say housing is the biggest tax generator in Australia. Housing is not a productive asset. It's not a productive asset.
So it should be a liability instead of an
It is
asset.
a liability. Have you haven't owned a house. A house is absolutely a liability. But the number of things that go wrong, it is not a productive asset. If you take out a massive mortgage, you have to pay for the mortgage. You have to repay the mortgage. You pay the interest on the mortgage. The money that was lent to you to buy the house never existed before you asked for it. Right? So it's created out of thin air, and then you get charged interest on it. But while you're busy working and paying that interest and paying off the house, you're not accumulating savings. Your savings become the house over 40 years. So when you die, the house has gone up 10x in value because they've just continued to print more money. And by that time, they've changed the inheritance tax laws, so they steal it back from you anyway. You can't even pass it on to your children. It is just debt slavery. Okay. But the fact that this is your, and it's similar, very similar in the UK, but such an extreme asset class in Australia is a function of the money being broken. Because if you think about it, what's happening is that Australian property market has been going up for 20 years, 30 years, 25 years probably. But why does it go up? It goes up not because you are running out of space in Australia, right? I mean, you can build a ton more houses. Like you don't have quite the same problem that we have in the UK, generally speaking. You're not running out of space. Okay, so why
Not
the
anytime
houses
soon.
going up? The house, yeah, yeah. The houses are going up because people know they can't keep the money in the bank. If you could do a day's work and keep the money in the bank and its purchasing power be retained through time, you wouldn't be worried about having to put it to work to protect your purchasing power. And so if you accumulate some savings, you absolutely don't leave it in the bank. And everyone listening knows this because it's just melting. It'll buy less next year, even less in 5 years' time. So you buy an asset, you buy a second house, you buy a rental property, which pushes the houses up, puts more debt in the system, ultimately debases the currency more because more money's coming into existence. And so you just do that over and over again, and the banking system then gets very leveraged to Australian house prices. House prices are not allowed to fall because if they fall, the banks lose money. People get over leveraged. You have a banking crisis, banks go insolvent. And so everybody is aligned to more money printing. If the banks go insolvent, they get bailed out by the government just wipes those debts onto the balance sheet, prints more money, gives them a fresh balance sheet again to resume lending, to drive a healthy economy. Then they make more loans to people. Over time, the more assets prices go up, the more and more leverage you get in the banking system because people have to take out even more debt because the house prices are going up much faster than the salaries. So now you have to take out 5 or 10 times your salary and not 3 or 2 times your salary, which would have been the case for your parents. And now, because you've taken out so much leverage, even a 10% dip in house prices or a 20% dip in house prices wipes you out. It wipes you out for your deposit and puts the banks on the hook for it. They can't do that. So they've got to keep pumping the asset prices forever. And because the house prices go up more, because people are buying them and speculating, they become more of a draw to people to not keep the money in the bank and to invest in property. But then it's never allowed to crash. So you have to bail it out and you have to print more money. It just goes on forever. It just goes on forever. And so there is no end to it. They'll just go up until the currency's destroyed. That's all. But like why would you want to put a millstone around your neck for 40 years? And so this is what you can of course play that game and everyone needs somewhere to live. Of course everyone needs somewhere to live. And it's very if you think about the impact of this on families, it's like if you can't buy a house, how do you properly put down foundations and have a family and have security in the future? And if you're having to take out a massive amount of debt to buy a house, you and your wife both need to be working to afford the house. So you can't afford to have children anyway. This is what is driving the destruction of the family unit and the massive deterioration in the birth rates. It's because people are being forced to work just to have a roof over their head, which is bonkers, absolutely bonkers. And so, when you think about Bitcoin, it's like, why on earth would I want to buy a deteriorating, an ever lower quality build house? Because houses are built worse now than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, which is more expensive in an asset which they can throw up more of across all of Australia. No thanks. I just want to live somewhere. Would I much rather own the thing they can't print and that they can't take off me? Absolutely. And so, you have, I mean, Australia is a very skewed example here, but we're on the, I believe, not financial advice, etc., etc. I'm encouraging you to learn about Bitcoin, not buy Bitcoin. But you're on the verge of like the greatest wealth transfer in history from assets into Bitcoin. Because once you realize why Bitcoin's important, why Bitcoin's valuable, and you see the fiat system for what it is, why on earth would you want to own houses? If you don't, you sell the houses. You buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not a liability, it's an asset. There's no rental. There's no tax collection from your tenants. There's no leaky roof. There's nothing like this, right? A home is somewhere you should live and build a family in. If you want to have an asset, you want to have an asset for 40 years, really reflect on what asset you want for the next 40 years, right? And the consequences for you as an individual of having that asset for the next 40 years.
Before Bitcoin, that was my number one goal. Save as much money as possible, buy a house, and boom, I'm part of the game now. Do what everyone else wants to do. Now my view is like avoid buying a house as long as possible. And with all that capital, stack as much Bitcoin as possible because it's a superior savings, store of value, asset, everything. Like it's the fastest horse. Then, assuming this plays out over the next, say, 5 to 10 years, a small stack of my Bitcoin could be used to purchase a property, or just I could just continue to rent if needed. And it's just going to give me a lot more options in the future when I have this honeypot that I can either withdraw from, lend against. And this is not financial advice again, but I'm saying it gives me options rather than just going, I'm in the market. This is good because houses were going up so fast that now I'm not missing out on part of this boat. I'm just going to now work for this mortgage, and that's my number one goal in life for the next 40 years. As long as I get my house paid off and I can give it to my kids, then I'm successful. Nah, I'd rather go, let's have some more options here. Let's give it some time. Let's stack as much Bitcoin as I can. And then let's go from there. So I've only got like a 5 year time horizon in the sense of just get as much as I can and then go from there. If it gets extended to go, hey, no, continue holding your entire stack for another 5 years, then I'll go from there as well. But I think just these next few years are very important for people to just sit back before you do a huge thing, like 40 years of debt over your head. Like, do you know what sort of life,
Yeah.
what quality of life you're going to have after that? I'm not sure, but can't imagine it's a great one. And really look into Bitcoin, think about Bitcoin, because you might be pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'd encourage people to reflect on what it is they actually own as well. If you work for 40 years to buy a lump of bricks and wood attached to the ground, where any government over the next 40 years can change the rules about your ability to be self-sovereign over that asset. They change the local property taxes. They introduce a wealth tax that includes your property. They change inheritance tax, right? You could have worked 40 years for nothing, and they just take it off you. And you have no choice because it's attached to the ground. You can't take it. You can't take it anywhere. They arrive with guns, you're gone, right? You can still see the house, great. You can't live there. With Bitcoin, you could decide to leave tomorrow, right? Somebody pushes you too far, you can leave tomorrow. Carry it in your head. Try taking gold through an airport. It's almost as hard as trying to take a house through an airport, right? You definitely can't do that. Right? So when you're thinking about what you're signing up for the next 40 years, just think a bit more broadly. You're betting the next 40 years on the stability of your government and the backdrop of the rapid erosion of any sense of individual rights and ownership. We're in the Weimar Republic in slow motion. Think about how that compounds over 40 years. Right? Humans aren't very good at compounding. Go back, have a look at what happened over 4 years. It's happening over 40 years. You think about how you protect yourself, protect your family for the future, give yourself the maximum number of options and a maximum amount of stability, long-term stability. And it's absolutely not buying a super leveraged, poorly built piece of Australian property, in
Yeah.
my view.
I heard something from someone at work the other day. Well, I mean, it was a while ago now, but he was talking about the problem with immigration here in Australia is Australia will want to source rich people from other countries because their own Australians can't afford the housing. So they will go outsource, bring people in that have big capital, and they'll buy up all the housing and continue to lift the prices. So the average Australian's getting priced out. And so he actually said something. He said, why can't they come over here and just buy Bitcoin instead? And I said, That's exactly right. Like, this is what I mean. Bitcoin will be the vacuum, the money vacuum that can actually draw and suck in all this capital, this excess capital that people don't know what to do with. And this
Yeah,
has a chance to demonetize the housing market and return it to its utility value. It can actually drain all that monetized value and put it into something that's meant to be money, that's meant to be a store of value, that will essentially bring other asset prices down. So, could you maybe just go into how all assets that are in this huge, well, you want to call it a bubble, but it's like they're all in a bubble, so then it's not a bubble. It's like, how can Bitcoin trend all those assets to zero against Bitcoin rather than being priced in dollars that are going up forever?
yeah. Um, no worries. I will answer that first, but I will add a comment. There is zero chance of Australia positioning itself as an attractive place for people to want to go and do business. Right? I mean, so
We've
the
screwed
fact
ourselves over.
to think that people would be flocking to Australia, right, as a safe harbor for being like, forward thinking and encouraging economic growth. I mean, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, you're up
So
there with the
it's a
you're up there with
worldwide
the
thing.
UK, right?
So
But
people know this. People know this across the world. Australia is just the
yeah,
tax nation, man. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The state's going to steal it all. So why would I go there with my assets? No, thank you. It's exactly the same in the UK. Like
Well,
we're
people are
all on the
fleeing.
same.
People are fleeing Australia. They
Yeah,
can't handle it anymore. They're like, this is ridiculous. Like, I've had this family home for this long. I've had my retirement fund for this long. Are you telling me it's a 30 to 40% tax? I've already paid tax my whole life. This makes no sense. Do I really own it? And I'm just there like self custody Bitcoin, self custody Bitcoin.
exactly.
Anyway, and continue. Sorry.
Exactly. So, you can feed that back to your friend at work. I don't think that solution is gonna be coming to the rescue. Um, but just more broadly, Bitcoin is on a path to drain the monetary excess that is in all of these different asset classes. As we've talked about, house prices have gone up because the money is broken. If the money was not broken, you would not feel the need to invest the money to try and protect it. And this is most obviously, I mean, everyone knows they can't keep money in the bank. That's fair. But it's because everybody thinks about their wealth in Aussie dollars. Whereas imagine if you did the thought experiment of thinking about your wealth in Bitcoin terms, then suddenly when I measure my wealth each year and I price up all the houses I own, I'm losing money. Right? They're worth less and less Bitcoin over time. So if my default unit of account internally, which I realize is not the case for the vast, vast, vast majority of people, is Bitcoin, and you have assets that are constantly losing money, you sell the assets and you turn it back into Bitcoin. You turn it back into the money because that was the whole point of you buying them in the first place, to try and protect your money. And so a frame of reference is incredibly important. When you think about your wealth in fiat, you just have to own assets because the numbers get bigger. You are becoming poorer even though the numbers are getting bigger because your share of the pie is going down because they're printing money faster than your portfolio is expanding in value. So you feel that you're getting wealthier, but you're getting poorer. Right? And this is the trick of the fiat system. Is that everyone looks at the number on a piece of paper at the end of the year if you own assets and say, feel good about yourself because the number's bigger. Priced as a percentage of everything, it's going down. You're being stolen from. You're just not being stolen from at the same rate as somebody who tried to keep it in the bank. They're getting stolen from a lot faster. You're both still getting stolen from. But if you think about your wealth in Bitcoin and you measure it each year, you're doing a terrible job of owning assets to try and protect your purchasing power. It's just owning Bitcoin. So, so this is again not financial advice. This is just an example. So frame of reference is just critical. When the money's not broken, you can keep your wealth in the money. This is like it shouldn't be a controversial statement. And then Bitcoin is a global free market. It's undergoing an adoption cycle and a monetization curve across all of these different asset classes. So more and more pockets of investors globally wake up to the fact that they're actually losing money or they are underperforming by being involved in the asset classes they're involved in. And they liquidate them and they move to Bitcoin, which perpetuates the underperformance of those asset classes and accentuates Bitcoin's monetization of the global economy. And you can just play that forward and eventually, why would you own a house unless it was just to live there? You wouldn't. You just own Bitcoin, right? And so houses become affordable again. And now you don't have to work for 40 years to buy a house. You get it at twice your salary, like it was 50 years ago, 60 years ago, which means people can have a higher standard of living. They don't have to spend all their time working. Both parents have to be working to afford the mortgage. You can have a one-person family, a one working person family again. Your wife can stay at home and look after the children while you go to work, or vice versa. Right? You can have more children. You can accumulate savings because you're not working to pay interest on money that was created for free on an asset that was way overvalued. Think about like how positive that will be for society. Like, what could you do with all those savings, all that excess time? Invest it in your family, have more children, add more to your community, build more businesses, create more wealth, create more prosperity. This is the future with Bitcoin, right? All this is coming. It's just, yeah, it's just hard. It's hard for people to see, but it's absolutely coming. And so if you haven't spent much time learning about Bitcoin or haven't felt like you've had the penny drop, you should double down on your efforts and just try and learn as much about it as you can. Don't be that person in 40 years who's trying to retire, realizes the pension system doesn't exist anymore, and that eventually when you die, the state's just going to steal all your assets and your kids get nothing. There's an alternative.
All right. Well, to wrap things up, I just wanted to give you the floor for a final message, particularly to young people. I'd say Gen Z and just people of my age in their 20s trying to navigate. Do they buy a house? Do they just sit on some Bitcoin? Maybe some resources you could give outside of just the what's the problem video, maybe some books or something you could recommend. And then just plug your X account, your YouTube video and things like that.
Yeah, well, I'll give you some books to start with. You should read The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. Absolutely read that. And The Principles of Economics by Saifedean, which sounds like a textbook. It sounds really inaccessible. It's not. The first couple of chapters read like a textbook. The rest of it is just the greatest book on economics. So you read those two things, you will understand some of the fundamentals of what we've been talking about today. It's like Austrian economics, basically both of them, which is the foundation for all of this stuff. And I would say like your generation like have a massive, massive advantage, Joey. Like we've got the greatest wealth transfer in history coming down the pipe, and you're incredibly early. Incredibly early. I'd kill to be in your position. Like the world is I am massively positive for the future, even though it feels like the world's deteriorating. And that's because of Bitcoin. And so, if you're young, thinking about what you can do to outperform in your career and your life, there are no better places to spend your time than Bitcoin. So in my view, ultimately, every Bitcoin becomes the money of the world, one step at a time. And this is a 40, 50-year adoption cycle like the internet. And we're incredibly early. So if you knew where the internet was going to be 50 years in 1975, if you could see 2025, you'd be like, "All right, I need to spend all my time and learn as much as I can about that area," right? Because it's gonna touch everything. It's exactly the same with Bitcoin. Exactly the same with Bitcoin. It's not just about holding Bitcoin for your own self-sovereignty and long-term wealth, and it's about leveraging Bitcoin to give you competitive advantage in your own life. It's like, how do I best position where I'm spending my time, the businesses I'm building, to be downstream of the greatest secular trend of this century, where it's never going to go back. And so, the number of Bitcoiners in the world is probably going to grow double-digit percentage every year forever, or like the next 40 or 50 years. It's like, I don't know. There's very few other areas I would be looking to spend my working time than trying to be the right side of that trend.
I don't know any Bitcoiners that have gone down the rabbit hole and then returned to the fiat system. Like, I don't know a single one. There might be 5 in the world. Like, it's literally, if you go down as far as we've gone and then return, like, you must be legit insane. So,
Yeah, but Joey, think about now that you've said that. Think about what that means. Right? You talk to people. You're never going back. You're going to orange pill more people. They're never going to go back. So where does it end? Everyone's orange pilled. Like, you already know the outcome. Right? It's just the compounding through time. And so if you know that, you've got a massive advantage for the next 30 or 40 years. Just lean into it and make a big success of your life.
100%.
You don't even if you execute poorly, you're still going to do pretty well. When you've got that sort of trend behind you. Um, and so, yeah, I know it's bleak for Gen Z generally, but there's lots to be positive about. Um, so hang in there. It's not your fault. It's because the money's broken. So just learn about the better money.
Protocols don't come around often. So to be a part of the start of one is, I feel like it's a blessing. It's pretty crazy. And so I feel very honored to be a part of this as well. It's very, very early.
It is early. Yeah, that's it, Joey. And if people could watch What's the Problem and share it with the people they care about, that would be great.
I'll leave some things in the description, links to the video, links to your ex. People can try and get in contact or message you there. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been an awesome journey of this conversation. Even for the time of day, this has been something that's set me up for the day. So I'm looking forward to just pondering on some of these thoughts we've had.
Well, it's been really nice to chat with you, Joey, and thanks again for being flexible to fit me in.
I know dramas, you too,
It's
man.
it's it's the timings couldn't have been further apart. So
You're Bitcoin famous, mate. So we appreciate it.
it's very strange. I just want everyone to understand what the problem is. If you understand what the problem is, the
Mm.
solution becomes obvious, and then we can fix it.
Alrighty, well, cheers, Joe.
All right.
Hopefully we can do this again in a few months. Appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. All right. Thanks, Joe.
Awesome.